everyone, my name's REDRUP. This is the It's Not a Phase podcast, and on this episode, I'm joined by Telltale vocalist John Carteret. The band have their self-titled debut album dropping really soon, so we talk all about that, recording it in a haunted New England church, working with Alan Day of 4 Years Strong, references to Edgar Allan Poe, and loads more. Before we get into it, if you enjoyed this or any other episode of the podcast and you want to show your support, there's a few ways that you can do that. You can hit subscribe or follow, leave a comment or review, give us a follow on social media, and if you want to go the extra mile, we've also got a Patreon and a merch store. You can find all the links in the description, or you can head to itsnotaphase.co.uk. Now here's my chat with John from Telltale. What's up everybody, thank you for joining me on this episode of It's Not a Phase, where I'm joined by John Carteret, who is the vocalist of the band Telltale. How's it going, dude?
Going well, thank you very much. How are you?
Yep, all good, dude, all good. Like we were just saying before, you're on an off day at the moment, you're on the road with 408. How's that all been going? How's the road?
It's been really awesome, honestly. This tour has been a really easy one, all things considered. The drives are short. It's still hitting all like really decent markets, but we don't really go anywhere west of the Mississippi here in the States, so it makes for some very close touring, very, very similar to like English touring, honestly.
Yeah, I imagine like the obviously touring around the US as compared to if you were touring in the UK, like the drives are just so much longer sometimes when I want to go to one show to the other.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, anytime you get out west, you can expect to be doing, like 10, 12-hour drives between any like halfway decent market.
Hmm.
But like even on the eastern half, occasionally you'll get into these like strange routings where it's like, 8 hours down just for 6 hours back up, and then 6 hours west for 4 hours back. And it just makes for these crazy overnight drives that really just sap your energy.
Just an absolute pain. Yeah. Yeah. Have you been test driving some of the new material on the shows?
We've been playing everything that's been put out as a single so far. It's a longer set. We've been playing about a 45-minute set every night. So it's about 50% back catalog and then 50% new stuff with the 5 new songs that are out so far. They've been going well. The response is really good, particularly for Eddie. It seems to thrive in a live environment.
Yeah. Well, I guess as well there's the added benefit of there's like a few kind of throwback like bits in there from some older songs, right?
Yeah, definitely. The older references, they definitely connect with people, especially like that tagline of "I don't want to be a letdown anymore," like harkening back to Rose, which I mean, like Rose is the song we can kind of always count on people to know, just because it seems to have done the best on the internet, like the DSPs per se. So yeah, kind of referencing that definitely helps people to have like an immediate connection to that new song.
Yeah, yeah. Well, kind of touching it there with the new tracks, but for people listening, you've got your debut album on the way, which we'll dive into in a bit more detail shortly. But, obviously with a debut record, you'll obviously get a kind of flood of new listeners and new fans along the way. Some people who will only have just discovered who Telltale are. So kind of as a brief introduction to newcomers, can you kind of briefly explain how the band came to be to where you roughly are today?
Yeah, I mean we've been a band for a decent little while now, just over 6 years. We all met when we were in college, actually. Travis, our drummer, was my college roommate, and then Bryce was in a band with him beforehand, going to a nearby university, and we just kind of came from the ashes of some other local acts that were touting about at the time. Um, as things tend to go, the East Coast music scene is very one might say incestuous in a way.
Right.
So it Telltale just kind of came from the inherent like member trades that go on, and we ended up finding a group of people, myself and them, and then Tim, our bassist, who just like wanted to do it the way that we're doing it now, and kind of felt all on the same page about our sound and what we wanted out of this thing. And we just hit the ground running about 6 years ago.
Mm. So is it right that you all came from roughly like, were they like heavier bands from that scene? I think I read somewhere.
So the other guys were in very much so just like straight up like classic pop punk bands.
Right.
But I myself was in a metalcore band, and
Wow.
the guys found me. They came out to a show, just like a local show one day, and I was very much into the like very like energetic live performance thing, like your glass jar, your let live, that sort of thing. So I was hanging from a ceiling rafter, and they said, "Forgive the motorcycle behind me."
So,
Um, and they said that was the moment that they were like, okay, cool, we want to work with this guy. It was hanging from the ceiling that made it all happen.
yeah. So for tips for anyone trying to get into like a new band, hang from the rafters and you'll be fine. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. Are there any band? So this band that you used to be in, would anyone know who they are? Like what the name is or anything like that? Or is it kind of
No,
no?
absolutely not. And I don't even wish to say the name on any sort of visible media anywhere. I've pretty much struck it from all my socials at this point. We weren't the best.
Right. But you cut your teeth, like that's kind of where you kind of, I guess, got to grips of being in a band and playing live and stuff like that to obviously where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I did my first like short little regional tour with that band, and learned a lot about just like the process of like building songs, how to self-record, how to demo, how to go about the networking process of like finding a producer to mix and master, just all of those like important things to making a good product.
Yeah.
Um, but just it never quite manifested in a product that anybody really latched on to. But I love Telltale so much that I
Yeah.
I wouldn't have really wanted it to. Everything turns out the way it's meant to be, I like to think.
Yeah, true. Well, going on to Telltale, obviously the self-titled album that comes out on May 17th via Rude Records. And, we were saying before, this was wrapped up recording wise, at least around April last year. So roughly a year between it being pretty much done and people hearing it. How are you feeling about finally putting this out into the world and letting other people hear this record for the first time?
For the first time in our career, I still feel very confident releasing it, even having, written these songs, 2 years ago and then recording them a year ago. In the past, it's always kind of been this thing where like I'm always ready for the next thing, the next, piece of music to be written. And I've started writing again and feel better about my songwriting. But like these songs to me still hold up, which again is something I couldn't really say before. Like I still go back and I listen to this record and I'm like extremely happy with it. I tend to get bored of music, even my own, very quickly.
Hmm.
And honestly, that's just like not the case with this album. I think it's got some decent diversity to it, and also just like touches on themes that aren't really passing for me, and hopefully aren't passing for other people as well. Like they kind of just maintain their importance as like lessons to myself and to hopefully other people. So, hopefully everybody that listens gains something from a listen through.
Yeah. Well, that's a testament to the songs, isn't it? If you yourself have been sitting on these songs for like almost a year, and to listen back to them now and still not be like, I'm a bit sick of this one, bit bored of this one. This one could have done with this or that. That just says, it's leaps and bounds with the tracks.
Fingers crossed, man. I hope everybody else thinks the same.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Always.
So, of course, over the past few years, you guys have just been putting out, singles and EPs, kind of building that foundation of what Telltale is and the sound and what you want to do. At what point did you guys start to think, this is the time now we're ready to do a full-length album?
We kind of knew following up after the last EP that this is just what we felt like we had to do as a band. We spent 5 years of our career making smaller bodies of work, and really only just like having 5 to 7 cohesive songs at a time that we felt like worked
Yeah.
as a packaged uh, something to put out. But this time around, like as soon as we got out of the studio after Library Out, it was kind of in my head at least. I'm like, okay, it's game time. I want everything that I write to fit with each other and reference each other and just like work cohesively. So yeah, I mean it's really been something I've been thinking on for I guess like 3 years now.
Mm.
And so like when we were writing for this record, we actually like did a lot more demoing this time around and had, finished songs. I want to say like 20 to 25 different demos when we went into the studio. We're like, okay, any one of these would potentially work on this record. Now let's just like pick the best of the best to make an album out of. Um, so yeah, we just went in really prepared this time, knowing what we wanted.
Right. So that was that. Is it Ghost Hit Recording, which is kind of like a residential studio place? Is that right?
Yeah, so Ghost Hit is the studio itself, and then they lease out to different producers. So Ghost Hit is this big converted old Methodist church
Right.
up in New England. Super spooky, definitely haunted. It was like situated right in the middle of a graveyard, and like I would wake up every morning and look out my window just like over a bunch of gravestones, and made for just this really, really eerie sort of feeling the entire time. But then for an engineer, we brought in Alan Day, who plays with a band called 4 Years Strong,
Mm.
and yeah, really, really, he led us to the studio itself. He was just like, "This is where I typically work out of," and we were like, "Okay, cool, like we're game," and it all just kind of worked out for the overall atmosphere, and just he felt like he was very in his element as well. I think, being that he typically works out of that space anyway. So it was nice. It was just super intensive. We spent 4 weeks there, and just really buckled down and ironed out the finished record itself. Um, yeah, really just holed up and took in the vibe.
Yeah. Well, what was that experience like actually, living, beside or, within the studio and just living and breathing this record whilst you were making it?
Balance definitely became really important to the overall process. There were times where like the burnout got very real.
Mm.
Because we'd break after an 8 hour session, but it would be like, okay, like I need you to come in tomorrow with like you being me, Alan talking to me.
Yeah.
Um, I need to come in the next day with like an entire, two more verses and a chorus finished just so we could stay on schedule. And so I'd be, hammering away in my bedroom at night for another 6 hours after, already having been in the studio that day for 8. And so then, any time where we'd break for the day and there wasn't really anything for me to do, it was just like super important to decompress and, watch a movie, read a book, just completely kind of detach from what we were doing. Um, so yeah, ups and downs.
Yeah, it sounds like the work just didn't end, just the grind was continuous more or less.
Yeah, no, it was nonstop for sure. And again, like any break was cherished. There was one morning where Alan had to like pick up firewood for his wood stove, I think it was, and we were just so grateful that we got to start like 2 hours later. And he like pulls up with a truck bed full of wood, and we're like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "I'm sorry, I'm late." And we're like, "No, really, it's fine. Like, thank you.
Yeah,
I
take
got
your
to sleep
time.
in today."
That's cool. Was there any like you said it's kind of had like a eerie, haunted vibe to it. Was there any kind of spooky going on whilst you were there?
We would definitely hear like footsteps upstairs after the studio was locked up for the night. Because we stayed in what was like a downstairs apartment on the ground floor. And then the studio was actually situated like upstairs,
Right.
where like the organist would have played beforehand. Um, and yeah, so like the studio would be all locked up and there definitely wasn't anybody in the building, and we would just be sitting in the living room space of this apartment, and suddenly there would be these little footsteps just running across
Oh.
the ceiling above us. And we're like, yo, what? And it's like, oh, it's just a building. It's an old space. I'm like,
Yeah.
nah, no, that was something weird.
Do you believe in ghosts then? Is that kind of
I absolutely I do believe in ghosts. I don't know if it's like poltergeist ghosts, but I believe in like spirits of
Right.
some sort. And like, yeah, they probably have some sort of like earthly manifestation. I've had too much interaction with what I would personally call ghosts throughout my life to like not believe in that at this point. Like they've always kind of followed me as a person. And like my family too. Like my mom and my grandmother, my great grandmother always used to say like that side of the family just like has something in our genes that like attracts ghosts to us, and like
Right.
they all have just like a slew of ghost stories dating back to like 1920.
Yeah. Well, if the band doesn't work out, you can maybe like a ghost hunter if they come to you.
I would be super down. Back in college, I had like a side fade and like much darker hair, and like I guess my face structure looked a lot like Zach Beggins from Ghost Hunters
Oh
or
yeah.
Ghost Adventures, I think it is.
Yeah.
So everybody used to be like, "Yo, Zach Beggins." Like that show's the worst. It's all staged.
Well, that's your calling, man. I think it kind of all adds up.
Maybe we'll do like a vlog series where we just go ghost hunting as a band. That would actually be like really good for content. That's a good idea. I'm gonna
That'd
take
be
that to the
really,
guys.
yeah. And maybe like do like something like the Devil Wears Prada and do like a ghost EP or something like that.
Yo, one second. Let me just go to my phone notes real
Make
quick.
a note.
If this actually becomes a thing, I will make sure that you are given proper credit.
Yeah, should be in the credits. It's all good, man. Yeah. So yeah, back to the album. We've been, obviously a bigger body of work than singles and EPs. Did you, before like knowing that you were going to go into an album, did you go about things differently? Like, was there more of a overarching plan of what you would do to create this body of work?
Yeah, definitely. I think like the writing process that we maintained for this record was very consistent, and like the elements that ended up making it into the like final track sonically. By that kind of what I mean is like, so I don't really like play guitar well at all.
Hmm.
I'm a singer, but I love production. Like I love doing things in MIDI and just like building out tracks, and like I play a little bit of keys. So either I would like build something out almost as like a pop style beat, or Bryce would start off with a riff, but then we both work in the same like DAW or recording system. So we would just send things back and forth. And I would kind of like add my touch with that pop style production, or he would add on to mine with more of like his style of guitar playing. And it just made for like very unique sounding tracks throughout. In the past, we would just like he would have his riffs and take them into the studio, or like I would have my beats and take them into the studio. But like this time, we made sure that the way both of us wrote was kind of represented in every single song. And I think that made for like tracks that were already almost finished when we went in, just because it had both of our hands already on it.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that kind of helped as well, doesn't it? If you've already built most of the foundation of a song, then you've got a much clearer idea of what you want to do to kind of polish it up in the studio. And it's quicker, especially when you mentioned before you're doing these long days. Imagine if you didn't have that skeleton of a song, like how much more
Yeah,
intense things would have been.
yeah, definitely. It made a lot more time for, like revision and polishing up the parts of it that we thought could be even better.
Hmm.
We took honestly the first half of our time in the studio just to like bring all the demos up to speed and make sure that they were like pretty much exactly what we wanted for final recording. And then the other half, the last 15 days, was actually just like the tracking part of it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was just like a lot of time spent revising what we already had and dialing that in. Um, but yeah, if we didn't have the references, I think we wouldn't have even finished a record, honestly.
Yeah. Well, not only that, like being in the studio, it's not cheap. So if you've kind of got things going quicker, then saving a few pennies there.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Money is always like a concern, but I think the biggest concern for me is just always like making sure that our music is like the truest representation of who we are as people. Like I'll never sweat the money too much, beyond like my own means if it means like we can get a better product. But like coming in prepared definitely makes you feel more like your money is well spent.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, you mentioned before, working with Alan Day, who is in 4 Year Strong, and he's done work with like Can't Swim and Knucklepuck as well. What was it like working with him, having his kind of, expertise in the industry and, having that production credits behind him as well?
Oh, he's phenomenal. He's a total workhorse. I mean, he's willing to put in those long hours and just like really drive the best result that you can out of you. Um but my only thing with Alan, and I say this to his benefit, he is the most exceptional guitarist that you will ever find. And there would be times where we would like turn a part over to him and be like, all right, like, Alan, we need your help with this lead. We're just not getting anything. And he would just shred something out. And we're all sitting there like, it's a little, it's a little too exceptional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Just
But
dial
yeah,
it down
no,
a little
he's
bit.
exactly like he's so good at what he does that the game becomes keeping up, honestly.
Yeah.
Which is good. It very much so pushed us to our limits. Just trying to keep up with his pace. So it was kind of nice. That definitely added a little bit to the like sense of urgency and like the grind, so to speak, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But it was also good. I think we really, really maxed ourselves out as a band on this record.
Yeah. Well, it's good that he's, kind of doing that because the last thing you want is to go into the studio with a producer who's just kind of, lax. They don't really care about this product that you're making. They just want to, press the button for recording. There you go. Song's done. You want someone who's kind of passionate about the album as much as you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had that experience as a band before. I'm obviously not going to name names, but like
Hmm.
we've most certainly gone into a studio and it's just been a paycheck. And that's always unfortunate when you think that somebody is going to really invest themselves in your project the way that you do, and then they don't. So
Yeah. 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 Always got to find the right people and the right team to push you. Like no one's going to be as passionate about the band as you guys are, but you want someone who's kind of just below that.
absolutely. That's always what we're looking for. And I think we were talking about this before we hopped on the air, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're just now finding like the perfect team around us that cares about our band almost as much as we do. And it's really helping us like blossom as an artist.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the artwork for the album as well because, it's quite dark and kind of horror looking in, I guess you could say. Um, and obviously it's like a picture of a raven, which I guess is that a reference to Edgar Allan Poe? And obviously he's got the short story of Telltale Heart, which is obviously the name of the band. And obviously he's got a poem called The Raven. So I guess that's kind of where that links. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So we kind of, as soon as we decided we wanted to self-title that album, we wanted it to be very referential to Poe in a way, just because of our band name. And like the band name comes from the fact that like Poe spent a large amount of his time in Richmond, Virginia, and like there's a museum to him there. And so it's just like a piece of literature that we grew up very close to. So yeah, we just kind of decided that we wanted to center most of the imagery around his stories and just like the imagery within his short works.
Mm,
So once we kind of realized that like the album was a journey of sorts, we needed like a figurehead of some sort, and of course the obvious choice was like a raven, being I guess one might say his biggest story, his most prolific work.
yeah.
So yeah, the cover, it's just an icon of sorts, being that raven on a journey, on a tumultuous journey at that. And then, yeah, we just kind of centered all the branding around just the very dark gothic themes. We wanted something that had a lot of like iconography to it. We went with this like little like crest plus minus logo because our
Yeah.
music is very like high and low, bipolar. We actually bit from the band you're wearing pretty hard on that. That was our main reference.
Sworn in.
Yep, we
Not even
did.
getting
We did these windbreakers for
yeah.
this tour because we were like scrolling through Tumblr, and I saw that old photo of Sworn In when they all would wear like the Death Card windbreakers on
Yeah, yeah.
stage, and we were like, oh, we got to do that. Like we already have a symbol. Like we're doing like all black with red pops for like the branding. Like that's sick. Like let's just do
Yeah.
it.
Simple, timeless, can't go wrong.
I thought it was
Um,
really cool that you were wearing that shirt. Like as soon
yeah.
as you hopped on the phone, I was like, "Oh man, like this
Yeah.
is what we're doing."
Yeah, yeah. Are you much of a, this is a bit of a side step, but are you much of a gamer?
No, I'm
Oh,
not particularly. That's the entire rest of the band. I'm the only one out of the
right.
four of us that doesn't game.
I was just gonna say there's a like a gaming studio called Telltale Games.
I am
That's
aware of them though.
yeah, yeah.
So it's really funny. We started our band and they weren't like really notable at all yet.
Hmm.
And then within a month, honestly, we should have changed our name right at the beginning. But within a month of us starting as a band, they put out that first Walking Dead game
Oh yeah.
that got them all of the traction. And it just absolutely destroyed our SEO. Like we got bumped to like page 6 of Google that first month. And I was like, darn.
Timing, man. It's just poor timing. Never mind. Never mind. Um, so I did see a quote from you guys about kind of like the overarching message of the album, and I'll just read the quote just so I'm not getting it wrong here. So, if there was one major takeaway from the record, it's that escaping into the isolation of your vices isn't a solution to the feeling of disconnection. Can you expand on that and what that kind of message is meaning, like what you want people to take away from the record?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't want to be too specific on it because I do like for people to take their own meaning
Yeah.
from our music. But just again, like it is a journey of a record. It's very much so like a rise and fall style record with a turning point towards the center. And I think just as it relates to that quote, a lot of times like as you're moving through life and you're focused on goals and you're focused on the very like material aspects of what you want out of life, it's very easy to like, I don't want to say keeping your head down is a bad thing, because keeping your head down and staying in your lane is very very important to achieving your goals. But if you're constantly keeping your head down and not looking to the people that care about you, you start to kind of forget the importance of the relationships around you. And that can kind of cause you to lose your way while you're on that journey. So again, it's back to that balance thing. And I mean, balance is definitely, again, a big point
Hmm.
towards this record. Just maintaining those interpersonal connections as much as you are your sights on what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And there's life isn't all ups and it's not all downs. There's a medium, and I guess you've just kind of got to work out the well, work out life, I guess, is the very vague way of trying to address that message, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, when I talk about like maintaining your relationships as a means to an end of, not letting yourself fly off the handle, um, there is that element of self to it as well.
Hmm.
And just like self-awareness, and caring about yourself as an individual too, as it relates to your goals. So I would feel bad if I didn't comment on that as well, and made it all about the people in your life. Like you have to care about yourself as much as the people in your life do. you know
Yeah, 100%, man. Um, so yeah, obviously you've got this new album coming out around the corner. What else is planned for 2024 so far for Telltale?
Oh man, we've got some weekenders locked in throughout the summer. Nothing super major, and then we'll definitely be doing something a little bit larger during the fall. Um, I don't want to say more music, because it seems a little bit soon, but as things tend to go in today's music market, I imagine we'll be putting out something else sooner rather than later. So it just staying busy. Nothing concrete's announced yet, largely due to we're still out on the road right now. But as soon as we get home, I'm sure we'll be putting some more stuff up on the socials.
Yeah, so everyone just keep an eye on the socials, and I'm sure they'll find out soon enough what's going on.
Most definitely.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. This new album's coming out on the 17th. Everyone if you're listening to it, this conversation before it comes out, get the pre-saves in, the pre-orders. After it comes out, get streaming. And yeah, thanks again. Any final words before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your day and obviously the rest of the tour?
No, I mean we covered it all. I feel like I got in the little bit about what the record's about, and what I think is the important takeaway. And thank you to everybody who listens. I'm super excited for this thing to come out.
Awesome, dude. Yeah, good luck with everything, and hopefully I'll catch you when you're next over in the UK sometime.
We'll be back soon, I'm sure.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Yeah, take care of yourself and enjoy the rest of the tour.
Thank you. Have a good one.
See you later, dude. And that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in to It's Not a Phase. If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Leave a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Follow the podcast on social media, and maybe even join the Patreon or grab some merch from the store. You can find everything that you need at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again. Hopefully catch you on the next one. And remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.